Welcome, everybody. We have hit double figures. We are now in episode 10 of the Ape and Bird NFT show. Steve, are we celebrating or are we waiting till we get to 100?
No, always good to celebrate. I think 10 is a pretty big number. Most podcasts like this make it to about 2 or 3 and then give up. We're at 10, which means we're much more likely to get to 100. So congrats to us.
Yes, we are. We're making some strides. But yes, good morning and welcome everybody to episode 10. We've got a few things on the docket today. Steve, we had some green actually in the markets when we recorded this time last week on the Friday. We've got some green again. Are we sort of seeing a pattern every time we record? We get a little bit of a rally.
I don't know. It's amazing. I thought after that CPI print and Bitcoin and ETH crashing that we wouldn't have seen a green market, but very surprising that it reversed very quickly. So I think it's fair to say that we are definitely the reason that we're in green here. So the more people that listen, the higher we go. So tell your friends, click subscribe, whatever you have to do.
Yeah, if you are new to the show, we are a relatively new podcast. We talk all things NFTs, not just at the project level, but also just sort of what's happening in corporate land, as well as a lot of incumbent brands sort of start to make their foray into the world of Web3 and NFTs. So thank you for joining us. And we will start with a little bit of a show disclaimer that we've been a little bit sporadic on as we got our rhythm going the first 10 episodes. So we just want to say the hosts, Steve and I, discuss all topics and products on the show for entertainment and educational purposes only. From time to time, we will refer to NFTs, products, protocols, and other items by way of example, but this is not to be construed as endorsement or advice. You are responsible as a listener for doing your own research. We hear that, DYO, all the time, and seeking your own professional advice with respect to any investments or activities. So with that out of the way, Steve, let's get into...
Legally, could we record that, speed it up 1,000% and play it, and that's us legally covered?
Well, that's what sports betting sort of, you always hear at the end of props and
drops. Get more responsibility, do not bet more than you can afford to lose, blah, blah,
yes.
blah, blah, blah.
But with that out of the way, let's get into the show. We're going to start with sort of a general market update and sort of some new mints that are happening right now, Stephen, on the horizon. What has sort of caught your attention in the last week?
Okay, well, last week we spoke about WAGMI United. So they had their mint. I can't even remember what we said would happen, but it hasn't minted out, but it's done much better than I actually thought it would. So looking at the numbers now, they were trying to sell 12,000 at 0.35 ETH, which would have netted them over 4,000 ETH, I'm guessing, if my maths is correct. They seem to have sold 10,000 or very close to 10,000. So bringing in 3,500 ETH, which is over $4 million US. They have sort of stalled out, and now on OpenSea, the floor price is 0.29 ETH. So this results in anyone really wanting to buy would just go and buy a floor one from OpenSea, as they're not unique items in any way. It's just as you mentioned in our pre-chat, it's an ERC. What was it? A 721A?
1155.
1155. Okay. So yeah, just the exact same image and NFT for everybody there. So it's going to probably be a hard sell the last 2K. I don't think they probably care with making $4 million. That's a huge amount in the current market. So they've done well. I saw a tweet saying that they've got their first decision coming up for all holders. They're looking for a new forward to buy. So it'll be interesting what software they're using to do voting and everything. For NFTeams, we created our own mini platform to do voting. But yeah, so they've done pretty well. And I think they played their first game this morning or yesterday. I saw a tweet. It was a trial game and they were up 4-0 or something. So yeah, something good to follow there.
I saw a tweet a couple of days ago that said, and for those that are not aware, Liverpool FC, there was a couple of people actually on Carly Riley's Overpriced JPEG show last year. I think it was around about April, May last year. So it was firmly in sort of that wave of much different market than we're in right now. But Liverpool did do an NFT drop, and I saw this tweet that said Liverpool Football Club, 100 million fans. Crawley Town, approximately 50,000 fans. I think they're referring
That's
to
more than I thought.
Well, I think they're referring to social media following potentially here. There's not a lot of context on this fans, but Liverpool 100 million, Crawley Town approximately 50,000. Revenue from their NFT drops: Liverpool 1 million, Crawley 4.5 million. The difference: WAGMI United is top to bottom Web3 native. Knowing how to launch in a Web3 native way is a multi-million-dollar skill set. So I thought that was an interesting tweet that could be taken a little bit out of context. There was two sort of additional points I wanted to make on that. The counter argument, I saw someone say that, you know, you've essentially had a bunch of Web3 and NFT degens jump into Crawley Town, and their own fan base might not necessarily wanted that.
100%.
You know, are you ostracizing your traditional fan base by having all these sort of quote unquote moon boys that have come in? And I am sort of casting a generalization there, but there's no doubt that there's a lot of people that have bought this because they think the price is going to go up. So I think that that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin for me is we are now, and I think we've spoke offline during the week, Steve, about this, that I do believe that WAGMI United is a really important experiment in NFTs and Web3, because I view WAGMI United as a true experiment in not necessarily the NFT having price appreciation, but does someone value the benefits from a digital standpoint and a physical standpoint with the merch items and going to games and things like that? Is someone going to value that value prop through an NFT, opposed to just does the price go up, right? And that's where I sort of think we've seen a little bit of chatter. I know in some Discords that I'm in, there was a lot of debate around whether this is a sustainable model and whether, you know, it's even a wanted model in sports. But I think it's an important experiment. I don't know what your take is.
Yeah, 100%. So let's go back to that Liverpool versus WAGMI United and how much they've taken in. And I've spoken to a lot of sporting organisations about their mints and everything. And I say to all of them, at the moment, you're going after the wrong audience. They're trying to convert their current fans into NFT fans, crypto fans. It's impossible. The onboarding is so difficult for a normal fan to come and buy an NFT that the smart thing to do, and what WAGMI has done and shown, is that you need to go for the crypto curious NFT fan first that also likes sport. So that's what I did with NFTeams, and now we've got that community that loves NFTs, loves sports, loves betting, and that's a very strong, and look, at the end of the day, that's a very valuable commodity NFTeams has. So we have a lot of sporting organizations come in and saying, oh, can we give you all these whitelist spaces? And I'm like, whitelists don't cut it anymore. So in essence, we've got a sporting one coming up in the next few weeks with AFL Mint.
Yes.
And they've gone half and half. They have gone and tried to get into the Web3 community, but they're also trying to bring on AFL fans. They've also tried to make it as easy as possible to onboard new people, but that results in them using Blockto, which means you have to download an app. The Blockto app, you then get a Flow blockchain address. People in the NFT community, some are fond of NFTs on other blockchains, a lot aren't. And then the great thing is you can pay with your credit card. I think that's probably going to be the only option, because with Blockto, you would either be able to pay with Flow or credit card. So they're trying to onboard both fans and NFT fans. So that'll be an interesting one. And they do have a very cheap price point at $49, I believe. So I'm looking forward to see how that goes in the current market. The other one that you brought up was what does happen to the fans. Let's say that this experiment fails and WAGMI United have brought all these Web3 degens into the space and then it fails, they have to sell. How angry are the fans that have been fans for decades with what happened to the team? Will they stick around? Will they leave? And it would be so interesting to get the perspective of a Crawley Town fan from what's happening. I haven't heard a lifelong fan speak about this at all. So that would be a very interesting conversation to have.
We should try to hunt one down and get him on the show.
Yeah, I think that would be really, like, It's tough though. The only one we would find would probably be crypto native because our reach isn't a thing. But it would be a really cool. I hope the WAGMI United guys get some of their dedicated fans. Like every club, you've always got that one guy that is the like cornerstone fan. Would be great to get them on and just listen to what they say.
I mean, I obviously have a sporting background, having sort of worked in sports marketing, digital and sponsorships for sort of 13, 14 years previously. And I've been in boardrooms, I've been in sort of discussions where I can just I do know some of the conversations that are happening, and I can pontificate on some of the conversations I know would be happening as well. And I just think that it's so important, and we do pump up Ridley quite a bit from Tennis Australia, but I do think that has been the gold standard for sports, because what the AO Artball project's been able to do is just sort of softly get into the space, be sustainable, get the backing of the Web3 sort of community. And I think as more crypto and sort of NFT adoption happens by the masses and more tennis fans, they've got actually a true product there that people like myself that's still a holder would happily say to a tennis fan that wanted to get their first NFT, yeah, this is a pretty good project here. And it's not, and for me, it's not, I'm not going to say to them, hey, I think this is going to double, triple, quadruple in price, but I'm going to say, this is pretty much like a VIP experience to what the AO is going to be doing over the coming years, from both like if you're here in Melbourne or you want to travel to the event, I'm sure you're going to get some perks in terms of physical tickets and maybe the opportunity to go into a suite and things like that. But you're also going to get the digital perks that come with that, right, as well. And I think it's just really important for sports to understand that if you go down the Liverpool route, and this is not to criticize Liverpool, because I'm sure
it's cash grab.
Right, I'm sure they tried their best, but it was a revenue driver for them, right? First and foremost, it appeared to be a revenue driver. So
look, a lot of these clubs are just handing over their IP for money at the moment, and it's a third entity that creates all these NFTs and takes the profit.
Yeah, and I think, look, if you're going to go down that route of commercializing your existing or your past IP or your sort of IP of current games, like the Top Shot model, like NBA, UFC Strike, etc., I think that's okay, but keep the cost down, right? Like you're talking about AFL Mint being around $49, so not too bad of a price point. Where you would think, okay, if there is an AFL fan that has never got an NFT before or doesn't really even know what they are, but they're willing to have a foray into AFL Mint, and they don't necessarily feel like they had the greatest experience, at least it's $49, right? I mean, it's still $50, but it's not breaking the bank at that point, at least in the current NFT market. But I think there's a world where, sporting organizations and clubs and leagues should be talking about doing more the AO Artball project model, where you can dip into the actual crypto natives, to your point, Steve, around sort of your NFTeams community, because there is actually a big market there's a lot of crossover, and you see it on a day-to-day in your Discord. There's a lot of crossover between crypto curious and an interest in sports. So there's a real opportunity there to sort of appeal to those markets first, and to recognize that maybe, if you're Essendon Football Club or you're, South Sydney Rabbitohs or whatever, if you end up getting holders of your NFT that don't actually support the club but are crypto curious and love sports, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right?
No, that will be a driver of new fans eventually.
Yeah, 100%. But should we move on to another topic?
Yeah, let me just wrap up with Ridley, of course. We think he's been doing a great job. But it's the difference between them having a 10-year mindset and where they can go, and somewhere like Liverpool seeing it as a short-term revenue hit, a revenue raise, and just selling their IP and not really caring what happens. So, I see great things for the Oz Open metaverse. And in 5 to 10 years, I think holding that ball is going to give us so many perks. It's going to be crazy. Yep. So on to the next thing. In the general markets, we've had as we mentioned earlier, an uptick. So we've had apes, punks, Meebits, mutants, everything's moving. We had a punk sale this week of 2.5k ETH, which was $2.6 million US. The interesting thing was the last punk big sale of 2.5k ETH was about $10 million. So while the ETH remains the same, the US dollar value is very different. But what are your thoughts on this current market and these blue chips doing really well?
It's been a pleasant surprise, but also in hindsight, I mean, I don't think we're probably out of the choppiness in terms of just general market conditions, but I had sort of this discussion with someone yesterday around JPEGs and our NFTs being illiquid is a gift and a curse, right? It's a curse in the sense of if you're trying to get rid of it quickly, you might need to wait a couple of days, you might need to wait a couple of months, but you also can't split it up. You know, if I want to sell half of my Bitcoin, I can sell half of my Bitcoin. I want to sell half a Moonbird, I can't do that, right? It's either
technically, yeah, it is and it isn't. There are platforms where you can fractionalize NFTs, but it's still so early. So
yes,
I get your point there.
It is early. But I think on the sort of gift side is, you know, there's a different emotional response to your NFT portfolio than your DeFi or your sort of coins that you're looking at. And yes, we can potentially fractionalize NFTs, or you can right now, but it's not really a sort of widely adopted yet. There's a few people that do it, but there's not a lot of people that do it yet. So I think that it can be a gift and a curse. And, you know, the floor prices of many of these blue chip projects, we've seen a flight to quality. We've seen a flight to sort of what people think will be, you know, valued in the future, like your CryptoPunks, like your Fidenzas, like your Chromie Squiggles, etc. So whilst the USD price has been hit hard, the ETH price in some circumstances has actually increased. I think we spoke about that last week, Steve, with, you know, Chromie Squiggles and Fidenzas actually having quite a big run up. And we've seen sort of Moonbirds holding well, Doodles holding well, you know, Clones holding well, Bored Ape holding exceptionally well. And then we've seen a big run up with CryptoPunks, because I think there was Punks probably hit about a 45 ETH floor, I think, at one point, and it's just been, you know, see you later since.
Yeah, I saw an email I got from Milk Road, and it was showing that Punks have gone up 64% in the last month, and Bored Apes 24% or something like that. And again, I always miss out. I was very close to buying some Punks at that 40 range, and now it seems a bit high. But just back to not being able to sort of sell something quickly. So yeah, you can fractionalize, but that's really only for massive ones. Like I could potentially fractionalize the Gold Ape and find enough buyers to get some liquidity there. But I know Franklin is bored, who owns, as of now, who knows, 30, 49 apes, whatever. So this is Franklin, who loves to show his slideshow of all the apes he owns. And I am in a chat with him with all the gold apes as well. But he was using a platform you sort of put up your ape as collateral, and then you get some ETH for it. So let's say the floor price of an ape is about 90 ETH. You might be able to get 40 ETH in collateral just to put that up. And then he's using that money to buy more apes or whatever. And he's thinking that he can make more than whatever the VIG is, which it might be 10% or something like that. So the interest rate. So he's using that. And those platforms are slowly building out as well. And the beauty is with collateral and loans like that, there is no tax event. So it all makes sense, and all this is going to come. And for Bitcoin and ETH, you can already do all this sort of stuff. But going back to that, being a forced holder, if most investors in anything, in stocks, in housing, in anything that you invest in, if you were a forced holder, you would do better than 99% of all traders and other investors. So like you said, blessing and a curse. The blessing is being forced to hold is actually, if we all believe that NFTs are a real thing and are going to eventually be worth a lot more, being forced to hold is actually a good thing, because you would likely sell at a much earlier time. And we've all seen it. I've made the mistake too. I sold 8 different Bored Apes in between 1 and 3 ETH. If I was a forced holder, I'd be much happier. But yeah, so it's really good to see blue chips holding up well and gaining in ETH price. But yeah, so should we move on to a few more current mints and sales?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just actually bringing up a tweet from Eric.eth, and Eric.eth, who has a 3D glasses CryptoPunk as his avatar on Twitter, was on a Bankless podcast recently with DC Investor. It was a really, really good, it was sort of like bear market war stories. And I think Eric's been in crypto since maybe like 2013, 2014. And he actually tweeted out yesterday, it's pretty wild how much more enjoyable NFT Twitter is than crypto Twitter these days. Now, I don't know if you can necessarily distinguish the two at times, but Eric ended up getting into it a little bit with Ryan Sean Adams from Bankless, just around, maybe NFTs was what DeFi thought it was going to be in terms of community. So I just wanted to quickly get your take, Steve, being in crypto a little bit longer than I have, that just, do you see any particular difference, or is this just a recency bias, that the fact that, NFTs are still coming off a really big wave and there's sort of, a bit of a lag indicator there, or is NFT communities just built a little bit different because we do fall in love with our JPEGs a lot more than we do of ERC20 tokens that really you can't sort of see?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And think about it. You've got banking versus art. And think of the people that are in banking and tech and so on, compared to your vision of people that are into art. Now, DeFi and crypto is a very dry topic. Unless you have an IT degree or an economics degree or something like that, known as very boring, nerdy things, you're not really that interested in the tech. Whereas NFTs, you not only have the tech aspect, so we get all of them, but we've got the art aspect, the community aspect, and if you have your general idea of an artist as being a lot more cool and so on. And I think I do see that difference on Twitter. People are just having much more fun, experimenting more, and then you've got the DeFi people that are all, well, we need regulation, we need this, we need that, this needs to be built, that needs to be built. But with NFTs, it's just about community. It is about building as well, but it's more about community, the art, having a bit of fun. So yeah, I definitely see the difference between those Twitter communities.
Yeah, and I think just the cultural crossover we've seen. I mean, just as a random example, I was on the train earlier and I was just sort of scrolling through Twitter, and I saw that Snoop Dogg's Bored Ape, who he named Dr. Bombay, has got his own Twitter channel, right? And there was this video.
There's an actual character.
Yeah. Well, someone in like a big suit, right? And Dr. Bombay was actually on stage during Snoop's performance at Ape Fest in New York. And, there was Dr. Bombay ice cream being sold and sort of some merch coming. And Snoop actually spoke about how he was going to roll out a number of things for Dr. Bombay at VCon when Gary Vee had him on stage. So here we were a month later at NFT NYC, and I'm sure some of these things were already in the pipeline. But just sort of watching that video, and some people will say it was stupid. Dr. Bombay was walking into a New York hotel and you sort of had someone like sweeping the ground in front of him. I just saw like, in isolation, that's just fun, right? It's fun, and it's Snoop Dogg, and it's culture, and NFTs. For me, like I go through phases where I'm like, am I just in this like simulation? But then I do zoom out, and I just think that the cultural significance of NFTs and just internet communities in general. Like I was having a coffee with someone yesterday, and they said, "What was the weirdest part about NFT NYC?" And so there was a few weird parts, but the thing that I kept thinking about was when I was at parties like, the World of Women one, the Moonbirds, a variety of other ones that I went to, Cyber Brokers as well. And we're going to touch on Cyber Brokers later, Steve. You had this for the first time, like if you and I got invited to an Instagram party or an event, right? I'm just saying that we're both Instagram. Well, let's even use Twitter. I don't
have an Instagram.
You're not on Instagram. Let's use Twitter. So Twitter invites us to a party. We're both users of Twitter, right? But we don't really have ownership in that sort of platform. When I was at these events and I was a holder, you sort of at the bar and you're sort of talking to people, and you had this mutual shared common interest that you were actually a holder, and pretty much every other person, unless they were a +1 of another holder, was a holder too. And we are now seeing the evolution of what I sort of describe as when sort of Facebook come along, and it started to get big, we met people in real life, IRL, and then we added them on Facebook as a friend to then sort of further or deepen the relationship afterwards. So it sort of went from a physical world to a digital world. what I see NFT communities doing, and just sort of internet communities in general, is we're going from a digital first world, and then we're expanding that in real life, but we've got this unique common interest now of having this shared interest in an NFT project. And I did question myself when I was giving this example to my friend about Moonbirds, because I said, well, is that because Moonbirds is still at a solid price? And it's like, okay, well, I'm happy speaking to this other person because we both know in the back of our heads that if things get rough, we can sell our Moonbird for 20 or 30,000, right? It used to be a lot more than that. But then I actually used the example of NFTeams, and I went, no, I don't think it is actually the price necessary correlation, because you put on a tremendous event in January after the tennis, and there was that sense of sort of community and just a shared interest that we were all in this community. We were all sort of, part of this like almost startup business to a degree with a different dynamic, because we're obviously not shareholders or anything like that. But I do think there's something to be said around these emerging internet communities that are happening, that are deepening the relationship of your internet community because of NFTs, that is then extending out to IRL. Anyway, just a little bit of a rant.
No, 100%. And you had a tweet earlier this week or a few days ago talking about ICQ. So we're humans. One of our core things is we want community. We want people to talk to that share the same vision as us and everything, and then we're always searching for it. So the internet was one of those first things that managed that we could talk to people on other sides of the world. I remember as a kid, I had a pen pal from Canada. So that was a really cool dynamic. And then we moved to the internet and we had ICQ, which was a messaging platform. And as I said to you, I still remember my ICQ login, which is a long digit of numbers, and I don't even remember my home phone number. And then we've just slowly, and you said Facebook came along, that made it so easy to connect to everybody. And then Twitter and so on. And now, not only do we get to find our tribe, but we've got a passport that shows that we're part of that tribe. So it's a fantastic thing. And as you said, it's not really about the money in essence. I'm sure for a lot of people it is, but NFTeams were at a 0.2 maybe ETH at the time, so not all that much. But nobody mentioned the price. Nobody talked about that. It was, I love sports. I'm really interested in this space. We had a great day at the Aussie Open, and then we're all having a drink. And it was just people, like-minded people getting together around all the things that they love. So, yeah, it's really cool what we've been able to do, and it's the next step. It's just having that fan card as a digital item, really.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, so we'll quickly go through the other couple of mints this week. So we've got Kingship. So that's Jimmy ETH. He's banned with one of the gold apes. I was on the pre-mint for that. I haven't minted yet, and I've seen about half of the 5,555 have minted. I believe it was 0.19 ETH. I haven't done enough research into it to mint. Greg, what are your thoughts on that one real quick?
Yeah, I mean, I keep using the analogy or the example of the gorillas in, the 2000s, the sort of the quote-unquote metaverse band in sort of the mid-2000s that were quite big. And I think Jimmy's using, or he's licensed 3 of his apes and 1 mutant, and one of the apes, as you said, is the gold ape. So, I think they've got a lot of plans to sort of roll out so a lot of tracks and be involved in sort of like metaverse concerts and things like that. I think it's very early. We touched on WAGMI United before. I see Kingship as being probably more in that WAGMI United mold, where obviously when you got someone like Jimmy.eth, Jimmy McNeilis is his full name, he can add value to holders at any given time, and that's always a possibility. But from what I see, and I haven't gone too deep into the weeds on Kingship, I would say this is probably more of an experimentation, where if you're looking for price appreciation, which is very hard in this market because a lot of it's just momentum trades at the moment, I don't know if this is necessarily the one for you. But I think if you want to sort of get in early and sort of you're a bit of a music fan, and probably if you're in the ape community as well, I think this is probably a good one to look at. But I don't think you can necessarily price this one in as saying, okay, this is just going to jump up, 5-10x in the coming months, because
it's not built for that. There are free mints and so on built for price appreciation, and then there are projects, and we're seeing it a lot more, that are built to build something. And that...
Sorry, no, keep going.
Yeah, and that might result in prices going up eventually. But yeah, I remember I had bought 5 tokens of another Bored Ape band. I can't remember what it was called now, but there were 4 Bored Apes in it, and they were going to make music and everything. I haven't looked in a while at how that one's doing.
I remember that one. I think Timbaland was involved with that, but Timbaland's got his own new project as well, using, I think he's called his ape Congo, is it? Or something like that. He's named his ape similar to what Snoop did.
Okay. I'm just looking now. It's Ape in Productions.
That's right, Ape in Productions.
By the Zoo.
Yes.
So it looks like the floor price is 0.13. I think I paid about 0.25 for each of them. So still okay for... I haven't heard anything from them, so yeah.
The way that I was actually, as you were sort of in that last sentence, Steve, that I was, we haven't gone too far down the rabbit hole of music NFTs yet, and I think we will in the coming weeks. It's certainly piqued my attention at the moment, just around music NFTs. But I think, I keep hearing, the sort of analogy to the super fan of discovering someone early, right, in their career. Like if you had known about Nirvana before Nirvana was Nirvana, right, and you had sort of been an early supporter and been in their sort of fan club, and you could verify that you were an early supporter, what would that sort of be worth today if you had an original vinyl and you had an original this or original that? That's sort of like this super fandom and discovering acts early is where I sort of put Kingship and Ape in Productions, and not all of them are going to quote unquote make it. But I think that, if Kingship, for instance, does hit mainstream, I'm sure that, the price appreciation or the benefits that you're going to get are going to greatly outweigh the mint price, but it's all speculation right at this stage. So I think it has to come from a level of curiosity of, are you into music? Are you into NFTs? Similar to what we were talking about. Are you into sports? Are you into NFTs with WAGMI United? Like, this feels like a very similar play.
Yeah, but going further than that, these ones I'm not a huge fan of. I want to invest in the person. So going further than what we're currently seeing, I'm sure there's going to be platforms where a young person that is a great singer or a great sports person or has some skill that puts themselves up and fractionalizes themselves. And we have seen examples of this already, not just in the crypto NFT space, but people have said, here, you can own my future income. We've actually got, I think they're ISAs from, you go to a program in school and yes, they teach you for free. Then they take a percentage of your wage for however many years or until you've paid off a certain amount. So I can't wait for a musician platform or a sports platform where you sort of get to see their work up to now, what they're willing to value themselves at. They put a business plan together of how much money they need to get to that next level or whatever. And then I will start investing in people like I invest in companies. That will be very cool. I can't wait for that.
I completely agree. And for those that are aware of the Royal Music NFT platform by Justin Blau, they've got Nas and a few others. I listened to an interview with Justin on NFT Now this week, and it was really, really good. So go and find that if you're interested in music NFTs. But what Royal's doing opposed to the scenario that you spoke about, Steve, which I think is coming, but I think there's regulation issues with that, like in terms of, is that going to be classified, in American law as a security, and is it going to be sort of classified as sort of towing the line or crossing the line in Australian law? And obviously there's a lot of jurisdictions to play out with that. But what Royal is doing is essentially artists that are getting revenue through streaming. So let's just use Nas as an example. Nas can say, okay, I own, say, 20 or 30% of all of my streaming revenue because the other 60 and 70% go to labels that he's got legacy deals with and If you buy the Nas NFT through the Royal platform, you will get a percentage of that 20%, right? But from my understanding and the way that Justin was saying is they can't do that with new artists because of regulation and because of a few other hurdles at this stage, at this moment in time, in midway through 2022. But for existing music that there's already deals put in place, supposedly NAS can now say to the holders, right, you are going to get a percentage. Now, how small that percentage is, I don't really know. You're going to get a percentage. So you are sort of quote unquote owning some of the music from that artist. So I think we're going to see more experimentation, but I think there's just probably a bit of cloud and grey at the moment in that space. Yeah.
Yeah. And how cool would it be, even for the person putting themselves up, if they sell 10,000 of whatever it is as a percentage of their future income, they get 10,000 fans straight away. So there's all marketing opportunities, sponsorship opportunities off the back of that really early. We'll move on to the final current market. So the big free mint this week seems to be the Saudis. So I just had a quick look at them. I'm not getting involved in any of these free mints for a number of reasons, security being a big one as well. But yeah, the Saudis look like they were CryptoPunks with so-called Saudi attributes on them. They've done over 7,000 ETH in turnover on OpenSea in the last week. I think the floor's about 0.7 or something like that. What are your general thoughts on not only the Saudis, but the current market with free mints doing extremely well?
Yeah, well, where are these free mints coming from? That's my biggest question. How can I get my hands on some of these?
One team.
Yeah, how can I get my hands on these free mints?
It would be one team that picks up a meme that's going around, and they're just like, all right, let's get these out. So we will talk about how much I've spent on the players a bit later on. But the smartest thing from a business perspective, if you just wanted to make money, would have been to put a team together of a couple of graphic designers, smart contract dev, website dev, and social media guys, and just crank these 10K projects out. Put out 100 free mints. It would cost you barely anything. Whichever one sticks. I guess you can call this the Azuki model. Whichever one sticks, you then really concentrate on. So we've seen it with Azuki, Zagabond, and we've seen it with Goblin Town. So that would have been, if you just wanted to make money in this space, that's where the alpha would have been. But yeah, this is just another project that tried to hit while Twitter was going crazy about the so-called the Saudis are buying Bitcoin. And it's rocketed because of FOMO and everything. In 2 months' time, when we're talking, it will be back to 0.1 ETH or under. But yeah, play these at your own risk. You've not only got the risk of buying high. If you can get into the free mint with a empty wallet, fine. But you've got worries of, if you have an NFT in your wallet, these free mints in the code might have a sort of anything in the smart contract that gives access to all your NFTs, and then they can steal them. So that's one vector that you have to think about. You're still paying gas, which is tiny, but yeah, look, it's a bit of fun. Use a clean wallet, and you can trade them if you like. But I'm staying away from all this free mint stuff at the moment.
I think it's a really good point around security and using sort of a fresh wallet. I think it's a really good point, Steve. I think the other thing for me, having come back from the US as well, it's a daily battle. There's so much stuff that I'd like to do, right? And you and I sort of talk offline about certain things that we could potentially experiment with. And the hard thing is when these free mints come along, I mean, it sounds fun. And maybe if you're in a job where you're, at home and you've got a little bit of time on the side, it's probably a bit of a hobby for you. But for me personally, I find it distracting and it takes a lot of my bandwidth because, you do get FOMO. And if I say, okay, well, I'm going to try to get in on this and sort of, potentially flip a few or whatever it might be, it feels innocent in my mind. It feels like, this will only take a couple of minutes, but often it actually takes hours and hours. And then you sort of blink your eyes and another day's gone and another week's gone. And these sort of big tasks that you want to get, into, you would know it more than anyone running an actual project. I do personally find them distracting, but I'm sure there's plenty of listeners that we have that sort of just dabble with NFTs. So, if you want to have a bit of fun, sure, go for it. But please take Steve's advice around, not just trusting everything that comes down the pipe and using a fresh wallet.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's pretty much the general market. Another thing we saw was overnight, or maybe 2 nights ago, crypto brokers had I think
Cyberbrokers.
Cyberbrokers, sorry, had someone sweep, I think it was 58 of them, and it wasn't just floor ones. And now, you're in the Proof Collective, and let us hear about how you think that they might be intertwined here, the sale of the Cyberbrokers and Proof Discord.
Yeah, so on the train this morning, I did see, so for those that don't know, part of being in the Proof Collective is you do get the episodes, the podcast episodes that are now in video form too. They used to be really only in audio form. So you get a YouTube sort of, what do they call it? Sort of private link.
Yeah.
Unlisted, I think is the right word I was looking for. And look, it's been sporadic. Sometimes it feels like you get it 4 hours before it goes out to the general public. Sometimes it feels like it's 4 days. I've been in Proof since day one, and I couldn't actually tell you. I know that Kevin has addressed it in some town halls around, trying to get the frequency to be a little bit more consistent. So Cyberbrokers did come out with something in the last few days around their new challenge. They're building a whole law around their project, and I've been bullish on Cyberbrokers from the get-go. I was a speaker at NFT Mel. I said to the host, Theo, are we going to give some alpha today? And I said, not financial advice, but Cyberbrokers. And that was my mic drop
You told me in January at the Oz Open meetup that was your next big one.
Yes, so I've been bullish on Cyberbrokers the whole way. I own 4. I'm keeping those 4 tight. I saw what Cyberbrokers did in New York. I think it's a phenomenal project. I think they've got great devs behind it. They've got a great story. They've got great art. Josie Bellini is an OG in just crypto art in general. So I think that they've got a real shot to be a prominent project moving forwards. But back to Proof. I looked at, I think I was looking at the floor for Cyberbrokers the other day, and it dropped to about 1.78. And I think it's up to around about 2.3 now. So, is that Proof Collective members sweeping? I don't know, could be. Is that part of, Cyberbrokers going out and doing quite a bit of media this week, and also mentioning that they've got, their new quest coming up. They run these quests, it seems like almost once a month. But, for Cyberbrokers, you mentioned, Steve, that not all of the purchases were at the floor as well. And I think that's the interesting thing with Cyberbrokers. And I actually even saw it after Mint. I know that, Pranksy and Jimmy.eth and a few of these other sort of NFT collector whales have actually bought up a number of the rarer ones. And I think that Cyberbrokers, similar to CryptoPunks, similar to Bored Apes, where you do see in these bigger projects, and I'm not going to necessarily go out on a limb and say Cyberbrokers are quote unquote blue chip right now, but I do think they have the potential. You do see the discrepancy between floor purchases and some of the more rare ones, and Cyberbrokers to me has shown that almost from day one. But they launched in a very upmarket still, and then it sort of it went down, as we've all experienced in the last couple of months. But I'm pretty bullish on what they're going to deliver in the coming years.
Yeah. So my question is, I always try to do the mathematical edges and everything. Would it be worth? Is a Proof NFT worth it? I don't know what the floor price is. Let's say it's 70 ETH at the moment. I think
it was 85 when I looked yesterday. Let me have a quick look.
So going back to that, let's say I have to spend 85 ETH to get this alpha of what's coming up on the next Kevin Rose podcast. And we all know Kevin is huge in the space. He's just getting bigger and bigger, more of a community with Moonbirds as well. When he speaks, people listen. And if he's got Josie and Cyberbrokers on his next podcast, people are going to be buying. I was a subscriber to Kevin Rose's newsletter early on, and he talked about Fidenzas and another generative project in one email. No, it was a one to do with COVID.
Ringers.
It was it was one you've never heard of and went nowhere. So it was, here's Fidenza, and the next paragraph was, here's another interesting one. I bought the other interesting one that went nowhere and looked at Fidenza. It still kills me. Anyway, so I personally followed Kevin into when he talks about a mint. So the question for me is that 80 ETH, can I get that back just from alpha? So if I saw that Cyberbrokers was on in a week's time or a few days' time, could I buy that floor at 1.7 and buy 100 of them? And then sell at 3, and then would make pretty much that profit. So it's an interesting thing to think about with Proof. Is it an alpha group? Or is it just the alpha is that whatever Kevin's going to talk about is going to go to the moon and get in that info early? What do you think Proof is there for? And you are a member, so how do you feel about it and where it's going compared to Moonbirds?
Yeah, I think there is a strong perception, and I see it at some group chats that I'm in as well, that there's a misconception that Proof is just an alpha group. And I think to say that it's not an alpha group 100% is probably a bit misleading too. There is alpha by being in Proof, and whether that's just mingling and what I call rubbing shoulders with some of these top artists. I mean, Tyler Hobbs and the likes of Gremplin and that, they are in the Proof Collective. Now, some of them are more active than others, but you are sort of rubbing shoulders with some of the sort of, well-known artists and people that are in the NFT space. Chris Cantino, who's a prolific sort of tweeter on Twitter around threads and things like that. He's pretty active in the Collective Lounge chat. I did think for a moment where, I know from listening to the Proof podcast, and it was originally Modern Finance, and then sort of Kevin spun it out to be the Proof podcast from an NFT perspective about halfway through last year. I was thinking, geez, similar to you, Steve, but if only I had bought Chromie Squiggles and Fidenzas, like if I had just followed Kevin's signal and bought up at least two things of everything he spoke about, I'd probably be in a really good position. Now, knowing when to sell obviously would have been another question as well. But I did have those thoughts because I wasn't really in the art market or the art space much before I stumbled upon Crypto Arte around in sort of August. I was more in your PFP and NBA Top Shot sort of model, the collectibles. I think that the steam ran out of what Kevin... So I suppose what I'm trying to say is I did map this a little bit, and I thought, okay, if you were to buy within the first 12 hours of podcasts being released, because these early episodes weren't available last year, they just went out to the public when they went out to the public. And part of a perk of being in the Proof Collective was going to be, well, it is that you get the episodes again early, but I can't tell you how early. It's somewhere between 4 hours and 4 days, probably with the average being 2 days at this stage. I think the steam's gone out of that. Now, that's a little bit counterintuitive to what we're talking about cyber brokers, because I've noticed when there's been new podcasts that have come out, and Kevin, like even Scab Shop's a great example, right? I think I told you a few months ago, Steve, when we started this show, or someone asked me, what's the last NFT you bought? And I said I bought 3 or 4 Scab Shop passes, which were Kevin had a tattoo artist on, and they were launching. And Kevin's put him on because it was coming from a place of curiosity of like, this is interesting, right? Famous tattoo artist, and he's going to do an NFT drop of 5,000 or 2,500 or whatever, and you need that NFT, and then you're also going to get the NFT of the tattoo that you physically get on your body as well. So does that add a little bit of additional value, et cetera, et cetera? Now, those essentially flopped. And I'm not saying that they'll flop long term, but they had to reduce supply by 50% during the mint because they knew they weren't going to mint out. And this was still during that sort of bull run in April before we started to go down, right? So it's interesting. There's a handful more examples too where I sort of was trying to make up for lost time because I missed Chromie Squiggles and Fazenda. So I sort of had the methodology of I'm going to buy 3 or 4 of everything of the new pod that comes out. But I got to say, I'm not up overdoing that, right? But I think if I did do that halfway through last year, when Modern Finance and Proof was first, come to the table, I would have made a lot of money from that had I sold at the right time. So I think it's a little bit horses for courses. Do I think that it's a bigger pro than con to be, on the show and to be getting this stuff before everyone else? I think that yes, it's a pro, but I'm not so bullish on the fact that just because he has one guest on, that you're going to be able to justify an 85 ETH spend from that quote unquote early alpha. And the other thing you're sort of competing with now, the Proof Collective is 1,000 members, and they are hardcore NFT collectors and degens, right? So
they've probably made a lot of money too. So you're up against
you're still competing against those 1,000. But Yeah, look, I think for proof, we saw the Grails drop in February or March this year. Grails 2, I got a little bit of an inside word yesterday from one of the mods that Grails 2 will be coming out in the coming weeks. And for those that are interested in Grails 2, it's going to be ran a little bit differently from my understanding. So as Proof Collective members, we will be airdropped, I believe, an ERC 721, or it might be an 1155. That will be essentially your burn token to participate in the Grails drop. And for those that are not familiar with Grails, last time there was 20 artists, and I believe it's going to be somewhere in the vicinity of 20 to 25 again in the iteration 2. You go to a website, a proof page, you see the art, but you don't know who the artist is. So it's a little bit of game theory there, and you're pontificating on who the actual artist is going to be, knowing that potentially is going to have impact on the price. And as a Proof Collective member, I think the mint price was 0.05, so it was very, very nominal. And the reason that Kevin did that in Grails 1 was for some of the lesser known artists that he had involved. He wanted to be able to give some revenue from the mint. They get 100% of all secondary sales, so none of that goes back to Proof. So yeah, excited for Grails 2, but as a Proof Collective member, you do get, there's going to be 3 Grails a year from my understanding. Where it gets a little bit murky for me, if you were asking me as a friend, Steve, do I invest in a Proof Collective membership? I still think there's a lot of value to be derived, but Kevin did say initially when it minted in December, it was a 3-year pass.
3 year. Yep.
But he left it as a little bit open-ended. And I've got to say the sentiment has fluctuated over the last couple of months since Moonbirds of, will the Proof Pass extend? Will there be a season 2 of the Proof Pass, or will it completely end? Because Kevin has said a couple of times on Spaces and, Discord town halls and things that, at worst case, it would end at 3 years, but he would commission a very famous NFT artist to turn those proof passes, so instead of the little card, into a desirable piece of art. But I know
you'll get the next copy.
Yeah, most likely. But to be honest, I feel like, we've still got 2.5 years left of the 3 years. I would much prefer, I would have more certainty to hold on to that pass if it was going to be extended, because I know that, maybe as we get into 18 months, 24 months, people start to go, well, it's now time to sell if this thing is not going to go on, which is interesting because Moonbirds, he said, essentially is a project in perpetuity, right? He's all in on Moonbirds being longevity. So whether the Proof Pass will extend or not, I'm not sure, but I would say it's more than an alpha group. It's Grails, it's the conference that's going to be coming up. It's the best Discord that I'm in by far, the Collective Lounge, for those that know the Collective Lounge. It's just high level. It's a place I want to be pretty much every day. And I think there's going to be more to come. We got 2 free Moonbirds, obviously, as part of being the Proof Collective. So when they launch more products, I would suggest, similar to having a Bored Ape versus a Mutant Ape, you're probably going to get more value having the Proof Pass than just one Moonbird.
Yeah. Okay. And we saw this week that Kevin posted a video of one of his team chats. So it was an internal staff meeting. What did you think of that and sharing in public like he did?
Yeah, I thought it was audacious to a degree, in a good way too. I want to ask you a question in a minute, Steve, around NFTeams, but I did watch the 20-minute video of you. Just go to YouTube and search Proof Collective. I think it's on their YouTube channel, or you can go back down a couple of Kevin's tweets. It was posted a couple of days ago, but all the other staff from Proof Collective or whoever he had on this Zoom call were blurred out. And there were certain things that Kevin said were bleeped out with with the graphic of one of the Moonbird glitch birds sort of going across. So there was certain information that they obviously didn't want to release. But I found it very fascinating, just the way that he was talking about, how they see the whole Proof ecosystem. I've obviously just touched a bit on the Proof Collective membership benefits, but talking about Moonbirds and their project High Rise, which is sort of their quote unquote metaverse build, but then
he mentioned Ravens as well.
He did mention Ravens, and he also mentioned sort of the Proof Collective media arm as well, and building that out, and the conference, the Proof of conference that they're going to have in 2023. So I found it really fascinating to go behind the curtains and listen to someone like Kevin actually talk about these things and see the docs that they're working with. I mean, it's just all basic stuff, right? But to have someone that has been building for a long, long time in the internet communities, I found it quite fascinating. But I think, you know, one of the reasons I've been so bullish on Proof and Moonbirds overall is I do feel like Kevin's at a stage of his life where he's able to deal with, you know, he's been in the spotlight as well from a public persona. I mean, he's on Tim Ferriss's show, one of the big podcasts in the world, multiple times. I think he's got the ability to, you know, deal with the pressure and deal with public scrutiny. But I don't know if all NFT founders and project founders do, and that's one of the big reasons I've been bullish on Proof. So, Steve, from your perspective, you know, I say to you, like, is it added pressure building in public? Like, Kevin's going right down the end of the scale to say, like, here's me in an internal staff meeting. I mean, you know, do you feel beholden to your NFT holders? Do you feel additional pressure versus sort of more the Web 2 model where you roll something out and when it's ready, you say, here, guys, now's the time?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I was lucky enough to cut my teeth in the sports betting industry. So I was blogging and sharing a lot of stuff and built a tipping website as well. And it's brutal. Like, you have people absolutely hating you. I had death threats, all this sort of stuff. So I was so used to sort of building in public from that perspective and knowing how to deal with all the hate and everything, and just you get over it. You learn some techniques, meditation, all this sort of stuff to get past the hatred that people have if you're doing anything. It's like the old one where what would you prefer to be, the gladiator in the arena or the person yelling from the stands? So I've always just been a builder. It's something I need to do. It's who I am. But what I did, just like Kevin, and it was great to see, was while I was building NFTeams, I was making YouTube videos. So you saw me coming up with the idea, how I actually went about creating these things with the graphic designer, how we built our smart contract and the generation and everything. And then you also saw us live as we did our first mint, which sold out in 2 minutes. And Matt and I just going, what the hell is going on? Like, you can go back to the YouTube channel that this video's on, or the podcast, just search for NFTeams, and you will see that video and just our faces after selling out the initial pre-mint. It's incredible. So I had filmed everything and shared it. And really, I'm a big fan of, in the startup space, you've got open startups. So what that is they share everything. So they share revenue numbers, customer numbers, burn rate, all this sort of stuff. And there are a couple of tools that make it easier to share that. And I was so keen to do that, share absolutely everything on building this project from zero to wherever it goes. But it just takes a lot of time. And so I had to make the decision, do I build the product or do I also like show the story? And building the product takes precedence over sharing every step of the way. But it is something I'll be very keen to do in the future, showing numbers and everything. And then the question of, are we beholden to our user base? We are in essence, but like any startup, I think in this space, because I don't know where the expectation came from, but just because you own an NFT in the product doesn't give you a right to give product ideas. And I've mentioned this before. We had a lot early on of people saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. And if I had followed any of that advice, NFTeams would be dead. So there were a couple that said, oh, we need to put our community fund into Terra Luna, get our 20%, and then we're going to have 20% more in prize money. Would have killed the project. We had a lot of other things saying, oh, we should use the community fund to buy all these NFT projects. Would have killed the community fund, killed the project. There were so many things like that. So it's hard. Like, I've got a vision that I'm trying to build, but I also understand that all these people as part of the community are the only reason I'm able to build. So you have to take what they say and figure out what's going to be good, what we can put into it. Early on, when this whole thing was going nuts, it was very daunting, and I felt very responsible. We don't talk about floor price in our community or anything like that, but when prices were going down, so we minted at 0.08, it went to like 0.2 pretty quickly because of just hype and everything, and then it slowly grinded down, and I think we hit a low of 0.06. And I felt responsible because not only are all these people have invested their money into it, but I have all my family, friends, and so on that are part of it as well. And that was hard to take. But then you just have to come up with like, look, I'm building something. It is a startup. Most startups fail. I'm trying as hard as I can. So all I know is that I'm going to put all the effort I can into this being a success. And I'm not going to give up until there is no other option but to give up. I still believe that we're going to do great things and we're going to build, but all of this takes so much time, and the cycle in the NFT space feels so short because when are you going to release the next thing? So it's a very difficult thing to try to figure out, but I think we're now, because we're in a sort of bear market, we're at a stage where everyone's understanding. We're also lucky that we've got a product that people love to play every week, so they've still got an interest in the project. But yeah, it's an interesting one. It was very difficult at the start figuring out how to communicate, what to take on board and everything, and it's still difficult. But yeah, I'm at a space now where I'm building what I want to build. It'll take as long as it takes. And people, I feel, once they see what we're building, will become more invested, and I think it'll keep going up.
Yeah, I think it's important. You touched on sort of your weekly or monthly brackets, and then obviously you've had the tennis event. And I'm sure you'll probably look at doing something like that again. And having those little pieces of valuable benefits, I suppose, to holders while you build the broader picture is really important, right? If you had done what many NFT projects that we've seen sort of fall by the wayside in the last couple of months now, which is this revenue raise and here's a roadmap, but we haven't built anything of it, and now sort of we don't have anything else to tell you, and floor price keeps grinding down. There's no announcements, there's no product being shipped, there's nothing to do other than hold the NFT. That can be where the pressure cooker gets even wound up even more, right?
Yeah, and I'm sitting on so much stuff that I want to release, but the fact of the current market cycle, there's no point in releasing stuff now when it's not going to have an impact. So we still have announcements whenever there's something big or something cool that I want to share. The Discord is the place where I put an announcement. Last night I shared a 3D file, so what we are creating, of course, with these players, and I did have a tweet earlier in the week saying that we've spent over 400k on just a design firm to design these players. And of course, Clone X had come out with their 3D files last week. We were going to talk about them last week, but we ran out of time. But it was very complicated to take that Clone X file. And this was 8 months after they've released these 3D files. But to take that file in Blender or whatever and create everything together, our 3D players are ready, sort of thing, out of the box. So I just thought, why not share one of the players, the FBX file, and so I put a little video together, shared an FBX file of one random player that we just generated, and all the community members could take the FBX file, go to Mixamo, which is an Adobe product, just a desktop experience where you can upload a 3D file and then click a button and they'll do moves like the Thriller dance or some sporty moves or whatever. And I thought, well, let's show that off. And that got a really good reception, and I'm hoping we'll see some people upload some videos of what they did with this test character. But yeah, so whenever we've got anything cool or interesting, I'm still sharing everything. And I try to treat it as a proper business. So when the market did crash, I did do a long blog post, an announcement on where we were, what we plan to do, how much funding we still have, and all that. So I'm treating it like a proper business and sharing what I can. Just not sharing a lot of the cool stuff that I wish I could to drive that FOMO, but that will eventually come when we're close to trying to mint out these players.
Yeah, and for those that are just sort of listening in potentially for the first time, NFTeams, go to their Twitter account, go to their website, play around, have a look what's on there for offer. But would it be fair to say players as a companion drop, or would you frame it as a different way?
So what we've got coming up, actually, I've just sent 12,000 jerseys to the render farm. Is jerseys are a free claim for each team. So that's coming up, and that is a companion to each team claims their free jersey. Now, players is going to be every single NF team can draft one player per team. I do not expect every team to grab their player. And I did a recent poll, and we had about 60% say they're buying, 30% say maybe, depends on the market, depends on the price, and 10% say they weren't. I assume we're going to sell between 4,000 and 6,000 of the players to the current community, but we want to bring in new members as well. So then the remainder will be sold, and we'll play some games, have a pre-mint or something like that to sell them in the open market. But yeah, so it's only NFT holders have an absolute guaranteed right to mint, but then there are going to be some left that we will sell. And then there is a few more things to come, but again, I'm not going to share too much. But I think once we release a bit more data closer to the mint, we will get enough excitement to mint them out and have a bit of a pop on secondary.
We might have to look at maybe having a prize or two for some of the Ape and Bird NFT show listeners as we get closer to that.
100%. We'll have some pre-mint things up for grabs. We'll give away some players. I am thinking of maybe having 500 stay in the community fund to give to sporting stars that want to come and join, and give away in weekly tournaments and prizes. So yeah, we'll have some to give away.
Sounds good. All right, we're sort of going a little bit longer than we normally do today, but should we round out with some of the sort of smaller mentions that we were sort of talking about earlier this week? So I'll start with one, Serena Williams. So we've spoke a little bit about Alexis Ohanian being deep into Web3, being an investor in the Proof ecosystem, the Doodles ecosystem with his fund 776. We saw Serena tweet about Clone X this week, Steve. Thoughts on that?
Well, this is a perfect example. Clone X actually, so Artifact sent that Clone X to Serena's wallet, I think just after mint. And I don't know if there's there's been talk that there might be something with Nike, because Nike released their .swoosh.eth website. And Serena is a Nike athlete, and with her husband massively in the space, it's just the linkages are there. Who knows what's going to happen? But it's just fantastic to see. I think Serena's the greatest tennis player ever. That's men's and women's. So it's awesome to see her getting into this whole space as well. And I'm sure it's just her husband a lot rubbing off onto her, as my wife knows more about this space than 99% of people, because she just has to hear me talk about it non-stop. So if you ever got in a conversation with her, she'll wipe the floor with the info that she knows. But it's just fantastic, and you're going to see more and more sports stars. I wonder what she's going to do with Clone X, or it might just simply be, I think this is a cool NFT that I got, here it is. But with her reach, that's massive.
Absolutely. We also saw Jenkins, the valet, drop Bored and Dangerous, I believe it was called. So, Steve, have you got a Bored and Dangerous, or are you across Jenkins, what they've been doing?
I don't own any. I was, from the start, I've loved the idea. I don't know why I didn't buy, but I think we've all read Neil Strauss's books in the past. He's an amazing writer. So I think the first one I read of his was The Game. but he's written so many fantastic books. And he was the writer that they've hired to write the Bored and Dangerous book. I'm not sure how it works. I think you have to mint the NFT and then you'll get the book sent out to you. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, I can't say that I'm across the nitty-gritty of the detail, unfortunately, on this one. But I did listen to Neil and the owner essentially of Jenkins of LA, the Bored Ape, sort of talk about what they had planned, and it's just another experiment and one that seems to have a bit of credibility behind it.
100%.
We keep talking about it. And it's interesting that I know in this bear market, I have a lot of people that have thrown shade in discussions I've had around this thesis or this idea of building brands from the ground up, right, through Web3 and through NFTs. Like even Betty was talking about it at NFT NYC with Bobby Hundreds on a really good panel ran by Ledger, and it's still experimenting, but I think there's really something to be said for where this goes, because if Jenkins of LA hits, right, and everything they're setting out to do with traditional storytelling through NFTs, which could potentially go out to physical books and Netflix shows or whatever it's going to be, is that going to do wonders for the overarching Bored Ape brand and other holders, right? And I think the answer is yes. The issue is going to be like, when we see some bad apples or some bad behavior happening, is that going to cancel out the good that we see? I don't really know what the answer to that is, but I think that it's really fun. And it's, again, going back to what we spoke about earlier around internet communities, it's just a really fun experiment to see what's happening with that. And obviously it gets a lot of buy-in from the Bored Ape community, particularly with this one.
Exactly. So I remember if you minted one of the passes, you could then put your Bored Ape to be part of the story and so on. So I think there's like 1,900 Bored Apes in the ecosystem. And we've seen other platforms now where you can put your Bored Ape up and anyone that wants to use that ape can say, well, I'll pay you this much for the rights to it. And I did see that they're also building their own world with Jenkins. And they had a Where's Wally type image that came out that was very cool with all 1,900 apes in the ecosystem. So it's a very interesting thing to watch. And it is very professionally run. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Your friends just got hired. So let's talk about Divergence for a quick minute.
Yeah, Harry and Aaron. So Team Divergence do all of the smart contracts for the Proof Collective and Moonbirds and Oddities, and I'm sure now Raven's coming up too. I had the pleasure of meeting Harry and Aaron at Blockchain Week in March this year here in Melbourne. They are actually currently based in the UK, but they were out here for a wedding, I believe in Tasmania. So Harry had messaged me saying that we could come and be a speaker IRL in Melbourne. So we spent a lot of time with them and saw them again in New York, and they've been essentially consulting to Kevin and Proof previously, and I think they were going to. I think even Harry tweeted it this morning saying they were going to have plans of building out their own team at Divergence, but they have pivoted quite quickly and significantly, and they are now full-time staff members with Divergence, Team Divergence, being acquired by Proof Holdings just overnight. So big news, I believe, if you're a Proof holder or a Moonbirds holder, because these guys are, in my opinion, some of the best Solidity devs in the world. And we sort of saw, they probably didn't stop every bot at the Moonbirds raffle, but I think people were actually quite surprised how good a job they did of debotting those pre-mint links, etc.
And now you're one connection away from that Kevin Rose hug.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You might beat me to it, Steve. I still think we got a good shot in the next 12 to 24 months of getting Kevin out to Australia, maybe for a future NFT Fest event, and most definitely getting him on the Ape and Bird NFT show, right?
Fantastic. All right, so news that I saw this morning, OpenSea are laying off 20% of their employees. So that's 2 employees, I think the joke goes. What are your thoughts on, I guess, OpenSea and laying off employees?
Well, I actually didn't know that. I've been out this morning, so it's actually a piece of news I wasn't across. I think it's probably just unfortunately par for the course. Like we're seeing it with, many companies that are in the crypto Web3 space particularly over the last 4 to 6 weeks. There's been a lot of announcements about cutbacks. So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I think it's just a reflection of how choppy macro conditions are.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I saw, it's not strange, sorry, but I saw a lot of negativity whenever OpenSea gets mentioned on Twitter. But it is interesting that they were talking about their burn rate now with this cut gets them 5 years, which in a startup space is a massive amount of time. Like normally your burn will last 2 years, you re-raise again and so on. So it's interesting that I guess their owners feel that this market is going to be in a bear market for a long, long time. But actually firing quickly is key. And it's not just the Web3 space. We've got all tech companies. For the first time ever, Google stopped hiring and will have an attrition rate as people leave. They're not going to rehire. Facebook, Coinbase, Netflix, all these huge companies laying off everyone. And it's the right thing to do. It sucks for the employees. But what you do in this space is you hire very quickly when the market's going nuts, and then you really do have to fire just as quick when it goes into a downturn. So I think this is not the worst thing. And once the market does pick up again, they'll hire quickly again so they can onboard and offboard. It does suck and gives you, if you're a potential employee, you have to worry that your job's not stable in this space because it's really about the fluctuations in the market. We saw it with Coinbase that offered, I don't know how many tens of people jobs, and then they offered their jobs, those people quit their other jobs, and then they sent them an email a week later saying, sorry, we've got a hiring freeze, you're not hired now. So, it's an interesting one, but it's just the market at the moment. And finally, let's talk about Etihad Airways. They're launching an NFT. So let us know about that and your thoughts on it, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah, so Etihad launching their own NFT, which, I've just opened this in the wrong browser, Steve. Let me get you back on screen. They've launched their own NFT, or they're about to launch their own NFT, I should say. So if you want to get, I think they're giving away a few as well. So if you want to go online and search for that, you might be able to get a free one. But they're dubbing it the world's first NFT collection of 3D aircraft models. So I don't know, from what I saw, it looks like a frequent flyer miles type of project and benefit. No different to if you were a Qantas, silver member or bronze or gold. They're saying that you're getting 12 months of silver membership with Etihad Airways. So, obviously like things like lounge access, extra baggage, just a few of those perks that you normally get as a frequent flyer. But interestingly enough, I think they're doing around about 2,500 when I read it last time. It's called the EY01, so a little bit of an odd name. It launches in 6 days. So if you're listening to this now, we're recording on Friday, July the 15th. Some of the things they got on their website, a unique piece of art. Obviously, we know that comes with the NFT. Immediate Etihad guest silver status benefits that I mentioned before, and additional prizes for first-time owners. So, is there a lot to this? I would probably argue it doesn't seem like there's a lot, but it's an interesting. If you're an Etihad frequent flyer already, or if you do use Etihad, it might be a way to get your silver status for the next 12 months at a reasonable cost point. I think it was a couple of $100, Steve, from what I saw, around about $300 or $400 USD. Just an interesting one. There you go, $349 plus local sales tax. So that mints on the 21st of July. And I just think it's an interesting thing when we talk about incumbent brands and how do we sort of, I won't use the word shoehorn, but how do we actually make Web3 and NFTs work for incumbent brands? Because I think, square hole, round hole, square peg, often people are talking about at the moment with NFTs. So, will this be a reasonable use case? I would think moving forwards, it will be. It's just going to be interesting to see what this potentially does in the next week.
Yeah, I think it's a good first step, actually. So I'm a big frequent flyer point fan. Traveling is one of my loves. And I was at one stage a 1% frequent flyer user through Virgin. So back to my sports betting days, I would churn through all these credit card rewards, ended up getting millions and millions of frequent flyer points. So for a short period of time, I got to travel the world in style on Emirates, on Etihad, on all these flights in business and first. But the thing is, people actually do pay. People will take flights that they don't even want to be on to get status upgrades and status and points and everything. And you can pay for these as well. So it's a very interesting way to onboard the NFT crowd. And I'm sure these images will be the planes with a wrap of a design from a cool designer or something like that. So yeah, it's a good first step. They're not trying to, it doesn't look like they're trying to make a huge profit with it, just getting into the space, see how it goes. But I'm interested. I won't be buying, of course, because I still don't plan to fly for the next year. Hopefully in a year's time I do. But yeah, it'll be good to see the response and where they build from here as well. As we said about the Australian Open Mint, if they're looking 10 years in the future, fantastic. So, yep, that's it. Well, that was pretty good. We went a bit over as per usual, but we will be back next week to wrap up the NFT space and chat about everything, really. So, good seeing you. Oh,
we should mention too, not in episode 11, but a fortnight's time, we have
yes,
Shane, the co-founder from Crypto Tax Calculator, joining us. So if you do have any specific questions around your tax with NFTs and crypto in general, feel free to tweet us at the Ape and Bird NFT channel, or you can find Steve at Day25 or myself at Greg Oakford, and we'll try to get a couple of those questions answered from Shane.
Yeah, and for NFT holders, we do have a tax channel, so just put your questions in there and we will ask them. Okay, until next week, have a good weekend and we'll see you then.
See you, everybody.